First Contact Professor Kira Nakamura adjusted her jacket nervously as she waited in the pristine reception area of the International Xenological Institute. After years of studying theoretical extraterrestrial cultures, she was about to meet her first actual alien, not just any alien. She had been selected as the cultural liaison for Thexor, the first diplomatic representative from the newly contacted world of Meridia. "They're approaching the building now, Professor," said her assistant, Daniel, glancing at his tablet. "Remember, the briefing said Meridians value transparency above all else." Kira nodded, mentally reviewing the scant information they had received. Meridians communicated not just verbally, but through proximity and bioenergetic fields. Their entire social structure was built around physical closeness. The doors slid open, and a tall figure entered. Thexor had iridescent blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer under the fluorescent lights. 4 arms were folded neatly against a slender torso, and large faceted eyes, like those of a dragonfly, took in the surroundings with an unnerving intensity. "Welcome to Earth," Kira said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I'm Professor Kira Nakamura." Thexor looked at her outstretched hand, then stepped forward until they were nearly touching. The alien's face was now inches from Kira's, close enough that she could feel a strange, pleasant warmth radiating from Thexor's skin. "This is proper greeting," Thexor said, voice melodious but with an electronic undertone from the translation device. "I am honored to share atmosphere with you, Kira Nakamura." Kira instinctively stepped back, maintaining what humans would consider a comfortable conversational distance. She noticed a flicker of something: confusion, disappointment, cross Thexor's features. "I've prepared quarters for you at the university residence," Kira said, trying to recover. "You'll have a private apartment with all the amenities we thought might be required for Meridian comfort." "Private?" Thexor repeated, the translation device unable to fully convey the alarm in the alien's voice. "I am to be isolated?" "No, not isolated," Kira clarified quickly. "You'll have your own space for privacy. I'll be in the adjacent apartment if you need anything." "Adjacent," Thexor said flatly. "Not shared." "I see." The drive to the university residence was filled with Thexor's questions about Earth's geography and climate, but Kira sensed an underlying tension. When they arrived at the modern apartment building, Kira led Thexor to the specially prepared suite. "This is yours," she said, opening the door to reveal a spacious apartment with large windows overlooking the campus gardens. "I hope it's comfortable." Thexor entered cautiously, all 4 arms now extended in what seemed to be a gesture of assessment. "And where will you rest?" "My apartment is next door. Here's my contact information if you need anything at all." Kira handed Thexor a tablet with her details. That evening, as Kira prepared for bed in her own apartment, she heard a soft knock. Opening the door, she found Thexor standing there, holding what appeared to be a sleeping mat and several shimmering blankets. "I have brought my rest materials," Thexor announced. "On Meridia, the first night of a new partnership is spent in proximity to establish trust and attunement." Kira blinked, taken aback. "You want to sleep in my apartment? Is this not acceptable?" Thexor asked, the faceted eyes reflecting the hallway lights. "How else will our minds synchronize for effective communication? That's not really how humans establish relationships," Kira explained gently. "We need time and personal space." "Space," Thexor repeated, the translation device failing to hide the confusion. "You wish distance between us to form connection?" "In a way, yes," Kira said, realizing how strange it must sound. "Humans build trust gradually." Thexor's outer arms lowered slightly. "I have much to learn about humans. This concept of personal space is most perplexing. On Meridia, distance signifies rejection or danger." Seeing Thexor's genuine bewilderment, Kira made a spontaneous decision. "Perhaps we could compromise. Would you like to share some tea in my living room? It's a human bonding ritual." Thexor's skin brightened noticeably. "Compromise. This is a concept I understand. Yes, I would like to participate in this tea ritual." As they sat together, closer than Kira would normally sit with a new acquaintance but farther apart than Thexor clearly preferred. Kira realized this assignment would challenge everything she thought she knew about cultural anthropology. The distance between their worlds was measured not just in light years, but in fundamental concepts of connection itself. Cultural translations. The university's annual international cultural exchange was in full swing when Kira and Thexor arrived. Colorful banners representing countries from around the world hung from the ceiling of the Grand Hall, while tables laden with global cuisine lined the walls. Kira had thought this would be the perfect opportunity for Thexor to observe human social dynamics in a controlled setting. "Remember what we discussed," Kira whispered as they entered. "Humans generally maintain about arm's length distance during conversations with new acquaintances." Thexor nodded, all four arms making subtle adjustments to the formal Earth attire they had chosen together, a flowing tunic over slim pants that accommodated meridian physiology while respecting human dress codes. "I have practiced the human greeting ritual of hand-clasping," Thexor said, demonstrating with their lower right hand. "Though I still do not understand why you touch only with extremities when full proximity would allow for complete bioenergetic readings." Kira smiled. After a week of careful cultural navigation, she had grown fond of Thexor's direct observations. "Just remember that humans aren't capable of reading bioenergetic fields. We rely on verbal and facial cues." "How inefficient," Thexor said, but with a tone that Kira had come to recognize as playful. Professor Jameson, the head of the Xenological Institute, approached with a small group of academics trailing behind him. "Ah, Professor Nakamura and our distinguished guest. Everyone, this is Thexor, diplomatic representative from Meridia." Handshakes were exchanged, with Thexor executing the gesture with studied precision. Kira felt a surge of pride at how quickly the Meridian was adapting. "We were just discussing relationship formation across cultures," said Dr. Patel, an expert in comparative sociology. "Thexor, I'd be fascinated to hear how Meridians establish romantic connections." Kira tensed slightly. They hadn't yet ventured into discussions of romance. Romantic connections? Thexor's faceted eyes blinked in the way that indicated processing new information. "If you refer to the selection of life bonds, it begins with proximity immersion. Potential mates spend 3 full cycles in continuous physical contact, allowing bioenergetic fields to harmonize." Dr. Patel's eyebrows shot up. "Continuous contact, as in?" "All activities are performed together," Thexor explained. "Nourishment, work, cleansing, rest. This reveals true compatibility beyond surface attraction." The group of academics exchanged glances that ranged from fascination to discomfort. "And what about the concept of dating?" asked a young researcher. "You know, going out to dinner, movies, that sort of thing?" Thexor turned to Kira. "I am unfamiliar with this term dating." "It's how humans get to know potential romantic partners," Kira explained. "We spend time together in different settings to learn about each other before becoming physically intimate. You determine compatibility before physical connection?" Thexor seemed genuinely puzzled. "How can you know if your energy patterns align?" "We look for shared interests, values, and emotional connection," Kira said. "Fascinating," Professor Jameson interjected. "Two completely opposite approaches to mate selection." As the evening progressed, Kira noticed Thexor gradually drifting closer to her, until they were standing at what would be considered an intimate distance by human standards. Rather than correcting the meridian, Kira found herself adapting, becoming comfortable with the closeness. The event coordinator announced that a dance demonstration would begin in the central area. Couples from various countries performed traditional dances from Argentine tango to Japanese bonodori. These movement rituals, Thexor observed, they involve permitted proximity between humans. "Yes, dancing often allows for closer physical contact," Kira explained. "It's one way humans connect physically in public settings." "Would you demonstrate this dancing with me?" Thexor asked, eyes gleaming with interest. Before Kira could respond, they were approached by Bennett Williams, a fellow professor known for his charm and good looks. "Professor Nakamura, always a pleasure," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. And this must be our extraterrestrial visitor. I've been dying to meet you. Thexor stepped slightly in front of Kira, a movement so subtle that only she noticed. I am Thexor of Meridia. You wish to establish connection with Kira Nakamura? Bennett looked taken aback. Well, I was hoping to ask her for a dance, actually. Interesting, Thexor said, voice cooling. In Meridian understanding, Kira Nakamura and I are already in preliminary bonding stages, as we have shared living proximity and engaged in the tea ritual multiple times. Kira felt heat rush to her face. Thexor, that's not quite how humans interpret those interactions. No need to explain, Bennett said with a smirk. I didn't realize you two were whatever this is. As he walked away, Kira turned to Thexor. On Earth, sharing tea or living in adjacent apartments doesn't imply a romantic connection. Then what does it imply? Thexor asked, genuinely confused. We have shared personal space, exchanged knowledge, and adapted our behaviors for mutual comfort. Are these not the foundations of meaningful connection? The simple question gave Kira pause. Put that way, their relationship did contain elements that humans might recognize as intimacy, just not in a romantic context. It means we're becoming friends, Kira said finally. Which is important. Friends, Thexor repeated, testing the word. On Meridia, we do not separate connection categories so distinctly. There is only growing closeness or growing distance. The music changed to a slow waltz, and couples moved onto the floor. Would you show me this dance ritual now? Thexor asked. As friends? Kira hesitated only briefly before nodding. I'd be happy to. As she guided Thexor's forearms into a modified waltz position, Kira realized that somewhere between cultural translation and personal connection, something unexpected was emerging. A space between their worlds where new understanding could grow. The bridge between. The emergency alert blared through Kira's apartment at 3:47 a.m., jolting her from sleep. Her phone illuminated with a university-wide notification. A severe storm had damaged the xenobiology lab's containment systems. All personnel, with level 3 clearance or higher, were required to report immediately. Kira threw on clothes and rushed next door, knocking urgently on Thexor's apartment. The door opened instantly, revealing the Meridian already dressed in protective gear. Receive the alert, Thexor said. The atmospheric disturbance has compromised the specimens. We need to hurry, Kira replied, noticing that Thexor's normally iridescent skin had dulled to a matte blue, a sign of distress she'd learned to recognize. Are you all right? Meridians are sensitive to electrical disruptions in the atmosphere, Thexor explained as they hurried toward the elevator. This thunderstorm creates dissonance in my bioenergetic field. Rain pelted them as they dashed from the apartment building to Kira's car. By the time they reached the science complex, the storm had intensified. Trees bent sideways in the violent. Wind and lightning fractured the sky in brilliant, jagged patterns. Professor Jameson met them at the entrance, his face grave. The primary containment for the Jovian spores has failed. We need to transfer them to the backup facility before they become airborne. Jovian spores? Kira asked, alarmed. I thought those were theoretical. Not anymore, Jameson replied grimly. They were discovered on Europa, harmless to most Earth life, but we don't know enough about their effect on non-terrestrial biology. He glanced meaningfully at Thexor. Inside, the lab was in controlled chaos. Scientists moved with urgent precision, securing specimens and stabilizing equipment. A series of cylindrical containers glowed with an eerie blue light at the center of the room. The spores are photosensitive, Jameson explained. We need to transfer them to these portable containment units. He handed them each a specialized case. Full protective gear is mandatory. As they worked to secure the specimens, the building shuddered with a deafening crack. The lights flickered, then died completely. Emergency generators hummed to life, casting the lab in dim red light. Main power grid is down, someone called out. Backup systems at 60% and falling. Kira looked over at Thexor, who had gone completely still. The Meridian's skin had faded to an ashen gray. Thexor? What's wrong? The electrical disruption? It's affecting my neural pathways, Thexor said, voice strained. Meridians require stable electromagnetic fields to maintain biological functions. Before Kira could respond, alarms blared again. A section of ceiling collapsed across the room, crushing equipment and releasing a cloud of luminescent blue particles into the air. "Containment breach," Jameson shouted. "Everyone to the decontamination chambers." Scientists rushed toward the sealed rooms at the back of the lab, but Thexor remained frozen, trembling visibly now. "I cannot move," the Meridian whispered. "My locomotion systems are failing." Without hesitation, Kira wrapped her arm around Thexor's waist. "Lean on me. We'll move together." "The spores," Thexor protested weakly. "Unknown effect on Meridian physiology." "We don't have time to debate this," Kira said firmly, supporting Thexor's weight as they slowly made their way toward the decontamination chambers. The blue spores swirled around them, settling on their protective gear. They had almost reached safety when the emergency lights failed. In the sudden darkness, Thexor collapsed entirely. "Help!" Kira called out, but her voice was lost in the chaos. She knelt beside the Meridian, fear coursing through her. In the faint glow of the floating spores, she could see Thexor's skin had gone almost translucent. "Kira," Thexor whispered, "Meridians can transfer vital energy through direct contact in emergencies. Without your protective gear." Kira understood immediately what Thexor was asking. Remove her hazmat suit in a room potentially filled with alien spores to allow for the kind of complete proximity that Meridians used for healing. "The spores could be dangerous to humans," Thexor added weakly. "I cannot ask this of you." Kira looked at the fallen Meridian, remembering all their discussions about human distance versus Meridian closeness. In this moment, the cultural differences seemed trivial compared to the life fading before her. "You're not asking. I'm offering," Kira said, already unsealing her protective helmet. She removed her gloves and placed her hands directly on Thexor's face, feeling an immediate tingling sensation where their skin connected. "More contact," Thexor instructed faintly. "Full bioenergetic exchange requires maximum proximity." Kira removed the rest of her protective gear and embraced Thexor fully, pressing her forehead against the Meridians. A warm vibration passed between them, starting as a gentle hum and building to a resonant frequency that seemed to fill every cell in her body. Gradually, Thexor's skin began to regain its luminescence, shifting from gray to a pale blue. The Meridian's forearm slowly encircled Kira, completing the connection circuit. "Your electromagnetic field is remarkably compatible," Thexor murmured. "You are saving my life." "Just stay with me," Kira whispered, suddenly aware of how natural this closeness felt, how right. The boundary between them seemed to dissolve, and for a moment Kira could almost sense what Thexor had described, the bioenergetic reading of another being. When the emergency teams finally reached them, they found human and Meridian still locked, in embrace, surrounded by settling spores that had changed from blue to a soft violet where they contacted the pair. Later, in the quarantine unit, scientists discovered something remarkable. The Jovian spores had reacted to the unique energy pattern created by their connection, neutralizing any potentially harmful effects to either species. "It appears the proximity exchange between your biologies created a completely new energy signature," Professor Jameson explained, studying the readings with amazement. "We're calling it a xenosymbiotic response." Kira looked over at Thexor, who was resting comfortably on the adjacent bed. Their eyes met, and Kira realized that something fundamental had shifted between them. They had built a bridge, not just between their bodies, but between their worlds. "In Meridian understanding," Thexor said softly, "what you did is the deepest form of connection possible. You offered proximity without guarantee of safety." "On Earth," Kira replied, "we have a similar concept. We call it trust. Foreign language of love too." Weeks after the laboratory incident, Kira stood in her kitchen, consulting a holographic recipe while a pot of peculiar purple liquid bubbled on the stove. The concoction, Meridian comfort soup, or something approximating. Airs filled her apartment with an aroma like saffron mixed with sea air. Add crystallized nectar during the third phase of lunar alignment, Kira read aloud, frowning. What does that even mean in Earth measurements? Since their shared experience in the lab, Kira had been studying Meridian culture with renewed intensity. The xenosymbiotic bond they had formed during the crisis had left traces. Occasional flashes of emotion that weren't entirely her own. Moments of clarity about Thexor's needs without words being exchanged. Medical scans had confirmed that both she and Thexor were healthy, with no lasting effects from the spores. But something had undeniably changed between them. Kira sprinkled what she hoped was the Earth equivalent of crystallized nectar, raw honey with sea salt, into the bubbling mixture. Tonight, she would attempt to initiate a Meridian bonding ritual, to show Thexor that she valued their cultural practices. Her doorbell rang precisely at 7. Thexor stood in the hallway wearing formal Earth attire, a tailored suit that had been modified for Meridian physiology, with special sleeves for all. "Forearms, you look very human," Kira said, momentarily taken aback by how the formal clothing transformed Thexor's alien appearance into something almost elegant by Earth standards. "I have been researching human courtship rituals," Thexor replied, extending a bouquet of flowers with one hand and a small box of chocolates with another. "I am told these items are traditional offerings to express romantic interest." Kira accepted the gifts, touched by Thexor's effort. "They are. Thank you. I have also made dinner reservations at an establishment with appropriate lighting and acoustic levels for intimate conversation," Thexor continued, consulting a small notebook held in a third hand. "Following dinner, I have tickets for an outdoor cinema experience as the data suggests movie dates are considered optimal for physical proximity, without the expectation of constant verbal exchange." Kira couldn't help but laugh. "You've really done your homework." "I have studied extensively," Thexor confirmed, missing the idiom. Dr. Patel provided several human romance films as reference material. I found them most instructive, if somewhat contradictory. Kira glanced back at her kitchen, where the pot of Meridian soup continued to simmer. "Actually, I had planned something different for tonight." Thexor's faceted eyes blinked rapidly, their version of surprise. "You do not wish to participate in standard human courtship protocols?" "I thought we might try a Meridian evening instead," Kira explained, leading Thexor into her apartment. She had rearranged her furniture to create a circular seating area on the floor, covered with cushions arranged in the spiral pattern she had read, was traditional for Meridian communal gatherings. "You have created a proximity circle," Thexor observed, skin flushing a deeper blue, a sign of emotional response that Kira had learned to recognize. "And I attempted to make kalovar soup," Kira said, gesturing toward the kitchen, "though I'm not sure how successful I was without proper Meridian ingredients." Thexor moved to the pot and inhaled deeply. "The aromatic composition is remarkably similar. You used earth honey as a substitute for crystallized nectar?" "I did my best with what was available," Kira said. "I wanted to honor your traditions." Thexor's four hands made a complex gesture that Kira recognized as deep appreciation. On Meridia, preparing sustenance for another is the first step in the formal bonding sequence. Kira served the soup in shallow bowls, and they settled into the cushion spiral. She had studied the proper Meridian dining position and attempted to mirror Thexor's posture, knees slightly bent, leaning forward over the food to capture its essence through all senses before consuming. In Meridian tradition, those sharing a meal also share their innermost reflections, Thexor explained, taking a sip of the soup. "The combination of physical and mental nourishment strengthens the connection." Kira nodded, taking her own first taste. The flavor was unlike anything she'd experienced, somehow both sweet and savory, with an electric quality that seemed to dance across her tongue. "Since our experience in the laboratory," she began hesitantly, "I've been feeling different, more aware of subtle energies around me. Sometimes I think I can sense your presence even when you're not in the room." The xenosymbiotic response created pathways between us, Thexor confirmed. "On Meridia, Such spontaneous bonding is rare and considered deeply significant. What does it mean for us? Kira asked. That is for us to determine, Thexor replied. There is no precedent for a human meridian bond. After the meal, they settled deeper into the cushion spiral, gradually moving closer to the center as meridian tradition dictated. Kira had learned that this physical movement inward symbolized the emotional journey toward intimacy. I have something else to show you, she said, dimming the lights with a voice command. Computer, activate Aurora program. The ceiling of her apartment transformed into a projection of Earth's northern lights, waves of green and blue dancing across the simulated sky. On Meridia, we have similar atmospheric phenomena, Thexor said softly. We call them soul ribbons as they are said to represent the visible manifestation of collective consciousness. They're beautiful, Kira said, looking up at the lights. Like your skin when you're happy. Thexor's forearms made a subtle movement and Kira realized the meridian was uncertain whether to initiate closer contact. In response, she shifted slightly closer. In human dating, there's often this moment of tension, she explained, when both people are trying to decide if it's the right time to move closer, to touch, perhaps to kiss. This deliberate hesitation serves what purpose? Thexor asked. It builds anticipation, Kira said, and it gives both people time to be sure of what they want. Meridians believe certainty comes through proximity, not preceding it, Thexor observed. How can you know what you desire without experiencing it first? That's a very good question, Kira admitted, one I've been thinking about a lot lately. Under the dancing lights, Kira made a decision. She reached out and took one of Thexor's hands in her own. In human custom, this is how we often begin. Thexor's skin illuminated with tiny points of light, like stars appearing at dusk. And how do you continue? Instead of answering with words, Kira moved closer, until they were sitting side by side in the center of the spiral. She gently placed her palm against Thexor's cheek, feeling the now familiar tingle of their energy fields interacting. I believe I understand this human approach better now, Thexor murmured. The gradual increase in proximity creates a unique form of anticipation. And in meridian custom? Kira asked. In response, Thexor's forearms gently encircled her, creating what Meridians called the complete circuit, a full-body embrace that aligned their energy centers. The sensation was like being immersed in warm, vibrating water, thoughts and feelings flowing between them in waves too subtle for language. Oh, Kira breathed, understanding at last what Thexor had been trying to explain all along. This wasn't just physical closeness, it was a form of communication more direct and honest than words could ever be. In that moment of dual cultural understanding, as the aurora lights danced above them and their soup cooled forgotten on the table, Kira realized they had created something entirely new, neither fully human nor fully meridian, but a bridge between worlds. When they finally separated, hours later, Thexor's eyes seemed to hold new depth. We have much to learn from each other still. Yes, Kira agreed, smiling. And I think I'm beginning to understand the language. The botanical gardens of the International Xenological Institute bloomed with both terrestrial and extraterrestrial flora, creating a vibrant tapestry of colors and scents unlike anywhere else on Earth. 6 months after their first meeting, Kira and Thexor walked hand in hand along the winding path. Their relationship now as much a subject of scientific interest as their individual research. The Proxima Centauri delegation arrives next week, Kira said, pausing to admire a cluster of bioluminescent flowers that had been successfully transplanted from one of Jupiter's moons. They've specifically requested to meet with us. To study the xenosymbiotic bond, Thexor said, their skin shifting through subtle hues of blue and green in the dappled sunlight. We have become something of an interstellar curiosity. Does that bother you? Kira asked, sensing a note of hesitation. In Thexor's energy field, their connection had deepened over the months, allowing for increasingly nuanced emotional communication without words. Not bothered, Thexor clarified, all 4 arms making a gentle rippling motion that Kira had come to recognize as thoughtfulness. But I sometimes wonder if others see us merely as a fascinating anomaly rather than as, what is your Earth term? A couple? Kira smiled, squeezing Thexor's hand. Let them study. What matters is what we've built between us. What they had built was indeed unprecedented. The initial xenosymbiotic connection formed during the laboratory crisis had evolved into something deeper and more complex, a relationship that borrowed elements from both cultures while creating entirely new patterns of interaction. They had established what Thexor called a harmonic dwelling, a living space designed with areas that honored both human needs for privacy and meridian requirements for proximity. Their apartment featured a traditional meridian proximity spiral in the center, surrounded by more conventional human living spaces. They had learned to sleep in the meridian way, in close contact, sharing energy and dreams. But Kira also had a small meditation room where she could retreat when she needed solitude, a concept Thexor had gradually come to understand and respect. Professor Jameson tells me the data from our most recent bioenergetic scans is quite remarkable, Thexor said as they continued their walk. It appears our fields have developed a synchronized pattern, not identical, but complementary, like interlocking waves. Like your music, Kira observed. She had become enamored with meridian harmonics, a form of music created by multiple individuals generating complementary, bioenergetic frequencies. What sounded to human ears like hauntingly beautiful overtone singing was, to meridians, a literal merging of life forces in artistic expression. They reached the center of the garden, where a newly installed structure awaited them. The Resonance Pavilion, as it had been named, was the first of its kind, an architectural space designed specifically to facilitate human meridian interaction. Its geometric patterns had been mathematically calculated to enhance the xenosymbiotic responses that Kira and Thexor had pioneered. A small group of researchers and diplomats had gathered for the pavilion's inaugural demonstration. Professor Jameson greeted them with evident excitement. Today marks a significant milestone, he announced to the assembled group. What began as a cultural liaison assignment between Professor Nakamura and Ambassador Thexor has evolved into a breakthrough in interspecies communication and connection. Kira felt a flutter of nervousness. They had practiced the demonstration numerous times in private, but performing their unique connection in front of an audience felt strangely intimate. Remember, Thexor said softly, sensing her apprehension, they will see only the external manifestation, not the internal experience. That remains ours alone. They took their positions at the center of the pavilion. The structure had been designed with concentric rings of a special alloy that responded to bioenergetic fields, amplifying and making visible the normally invisible energy exchange between them. Kira closed her eyes and focused on her breathing, following the technique Thexor had taught her for conscious field generation. At the same time, Thexor began the traditional meridian harmonics, a subtle vibration that started deep in their chest and gradually expanded outward. As their energies synchronized, the pavilion responded. The metallic rings began to glow with soft light, pulsing in patterns that matched their combined field. Colors flowed like liquid around the structure, blues and greens from Thexor, warmer ambers and golds from Kira, blending where their fields overlapped to create entirely new. As the audience watched in silent awe as the visual representation of their connection danced around them. What they couldn't feel was the profound sense of unity that Kira and Thexor experienced. A communication beyond words or even thoughts, a direct knowing of another being's essence. When they finally completed the demonstration, the applause was enthusiastic but somewhat subdued, as if the witnesses recognized they had observed something deeply personal. Remarkable, Professor Jameson said, approaching them. The potential applications for diplomatic relations with other non-humanoid species are extraordinary. You've essentially created a new language. Not created, Thexor corrected gently. Discovered. The potential for connection exists in all sentient beings. We merely found a bridge between our different ways of experiencing it. Later that evening, as they walked along the beach near their home, Kira reflected on how far they had come. The initial awkwardness and cultural misunderstandings had given way to something neither of them could have anticipated. I received a communication from the Meridian High Council today, Thexor said, watching the sunset paint the ocean in colors reminiscent of their energy fields. They have officially recognized our bond as the first registered human Meridian partnership. Kira stopped walking, surprised. Is that significant? Extremely, Thexor replied, all four arms making the gesture of formal acknowledgement. It means any children we might choose to have, whether biological through genetic engineering or adopted, would be recognized as citizens of both Earth and Meridia. Children, Kira repeated, the word both startling and somehow right. You've been thinking about our future. Meridians always consider bonding as the beginning of a potential familial unit, Thexor explained. Though I understand humans often bond for extended periods before considering reproduction, Kira laughed softly. We've created enough scientific breakthroughs for 1 year, don't you think? Maybe we can take things one step at a time. Thexor's skin rippled with points of light, their equivalent of laughter. A very human approach. But I find I have developed appreciation for your species' tendency to savor each phase of connection. They stood together at the edge of the water, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Somewhere among them was Meridia, Thexor's homeworld, now connected to Earth not just by diplomatic relations but by the bond they had forged. When I first arrived, Thexor said, I believed your human distance was a form of rejection. I could not understand how beings could connect while maintaining separation. And I couldn't understand how closeness could exist without first establishing boundaries, Kira admitted. I thought your meridian proximity was invasive. Perhaps both approaches have wisdom, Thexor suggested. The dance between closeness and distance creates a dynamic energy that static positions cannot, Kira nodded, feeling the truth of this in their connection. Like breathing, the rhythm of taking in and letting go again and again. As if to demonstrate, Thexor moved away slightly, creating space between them. Kira felt the gentle tug of their energy field, like an invisible thread connecting them even at a distance. Then Thexor moved close again, their fields merging and amplifying each other. Proximity, Thexor said. And distance, Kira added. Both necessary, they concluded together. Above them, a shooting star traced a brilliant path across the night sky, a bridge of light connecting distant points in space, momentary but magnificent. Like the unique relationship they had built between their worlds, it created a new pattern against the ancient backdrop of the universe, unexpected, unprecedented, and undeniably beautiful in its singularity. In that moment, standing between earth and sky, between human and alien understanding, Kira realized that they had indeed created something entirely new, a relationship that honored both their cultures while transcending the limitations of each. Not just a diplomatic success or a scientific breakthrough, but a testament to the universal possibility of connection across even the vastest of differences. The interstellar harmony they had discovered was not about erasing their distinct natures, but about finding the resonance between them, the place where difference itself became the source of something greater than either could have created alone.